The dragon lay on the jagged stones of the mountain ledge, its enormous wings folded against its back like broken sails. Its scales dulled and cracked from centuries of battles. The air around it shimmered with heat and pain. Each breath rattled. Like an old bell, its eyes half closed, yet glowing with a golden light that seemed to carry the weight of time itself. It whispered its last wish into the wind, a voice that was at once thunder and sigh that carried across the valleys below, hoping that someone somewhere would hear its desperate call. The mountains trembled slightly, as if the earth itself mourned the creature that had ruled the skies for ages. Its tail twitched in slow spasms, leaving deep gouges in the rock. In every movement was a battle between life and the inevitability of death. Above the dragon, the clouds rolled, lazily oblivious to the struggle unfolding beneath. Their white calm, the wind carried the faint smell of smoke and ash and the distant roar of waterfalls from the forest below, and yet the dragon felt alone in all the world. For centuries it had seen kingdoms rise and fall, humans and creatures alike bow to its might, and still it had never known companionship, never felt the simple understanding that now it longed for most of all. The dragon lifted its head slightly, and the mountains echoed with a sound that was part groan, part song. A name it had whispered countless times over the centuries, a name that once brought warmth and recognition, now faded from memory of all living things. Yet the dragon remembered it clearly, as if carved into the marrow of its bones. The claws dug into the stone, leaving deep furrows, and the pain was sharp, but secondary to the ache in its chest, a longing for connection, a final moment of being seen and known. Its eyes searched the distant valleys, searching for someone, anyone, to answer the silent plea. The sun dipped lower and cast long shadows over the jagged rocks, painting the dragon in a mix of gold and black, as if the world itself could not decide whether to honor it or forget it. The dragon's massive wings twitched once, a memory of flight, a spark of life, struggling to persist against the weight of years. Its throat trembled as it tried to speak again, the name, the last wish, the hope that beyond all the ash and ruin there might be someone left who understood, someone who remembered. And in that fragile moment between life and death, the dragon felt the stirrings of a change, a pull in the air, a presence it could not name, and hope flickered like a candle in the endless night far below. In the dusty corridors of the old library, the janitor pushed his mop across the worn wooden floors, humming softly to himself. The smell of old books and polish filled the air, and he barely noticed the quiet hum of the city outside, until a strange light flickered against the high windows, golden and warm, as if the sun itself had fallen inside the building. He paused mid-sweep, his hand gripping the handle tighter, his heart beating faster than it had in years. A sound unlike any other reached his ears, a voice deep and ancient, carrying weight and urgency, yet soft enough to pierce the ordinary life he had known. He froze and looked around, but saw nothing, only stacks of books, shadows stretching long across the floor, and the dust dancing in the thin shafts of light. And then it spoke again, the name like a thread pulling at something deep inside, a memory he could not place, a feeling of recognition, of belonging he could not explain. The hairs on his arms stood on end, and the mop slipped from his hands, clattering softly to the floor. He stepped closer to the window, the light shifting and bending as if reaching for him, and the voice grew stronger inside his mind, a whisper at first, then a commanding call. He staggered backward, heart racing, trying to make sense of what was happening, and yet he could not deny it. The pull was irresistible. It filled him with wonder and fear all at once. He wanted to run, hide, deny it, but something told him this was no ordinary day, no ordinary summons. It was as if the world had shifted, and now he was standing on the edge of something enormous, something impossible, and, for the first time, he understood that his quiet life, sweeping floors and tidying books, had led him here, to this moment. To hear a dragon speak to him across the miles, calling his name. The ordinary had collided with the extraordinary, and he could not turn away. He stepped out of the library into the twilight of the city streets, the light guiding him, a path he did not know yet somehow understood. He was moving toward destiny and adventure, and the dragon waited above, unseen, yet nearer than he could imagine. The janitor left the city behind and followed the faint golden glow that pulsed in the air like a heartbeat. Every step took him further from the streets and into the dense forest. The trees loomed tall and silent, their branches brushing against each other, whispering secrets he could not understand. The ground was uneven, roots twisted and rose like snakes, trying to trip him, yet he pressed on, drawn by a force he could neither name nor resist. The light led him over streams that shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting glimpses of the dragon's enormous eyes, and across fields where the wind carried whispers of old battles and forgotten creatures. He stumbled several times, his legs aching, and his breath coming in ragged gasps, yet the pull persisted, urging him onward. The air itself seemed to hum with magic. The smell of earth and moss mixed with something ancient and sweet. He touched a tree, and felt warmth coursing through his fingers, a heartbeat, a rhythm that matched the light, and he realized the dragon's presence was closer than he thought. A shiver ran down his spine, and fear mingled with awe. He imagined the dragon waiting on some high ledge, its massive wings folding and unfolding like a storm. Restrained, he wondered what would happen when he reached it, if he would be worthy, or if he would falter. But the voice in his mind called again, and he could not stop walking. He could feel the pull in his chest like a tether, drawing him forward, every step bringing him closer to the impossible, every breath filling him with anticipation and dread. And yet he smiled despite himself for the first time in years. He felt alive, more alive than he had ever felt, pushing through the undergrowth, the sunlight fading behind the thick canopy, the golden glow now almost tangible around him, a promise, a summons, a life-changing moment. He did not fully understand, and still he walked toward it, toward the dragon, toward the name that waited for him in the mountains above, waiting to be spoken, and remembered the forest, thickened around the janitor, every step heavier than the last roots and vines, tugging at his clothes and shoes. Yet he felt no fear, only a strange exhilaration, as if the air itself were alive, whispering secrets of times long past. The leaves rustled in patterns he could almost understand. The stones beneath his feet pulsed with warmth and energy, and he pressed his hands against one, feeling a tingle run up his arms. Like electricity, his breath caught, and he realized the dragon was near. He could feel it in the vibrations of the earth, in the hum of the wind, in the scent of smoke, and something sweeter, something older than memory itself. A bird sang a song he had never heard, yet remembered in his bones. A stream glimmered ahead, reflecting shapes that danced like flames and shadows. He stopped and stared, seeing for a moment visions of dragons, flying above mountains of fire, cities crumbling under claws and wings. Yet in the midst of chaos, there was something familiar, a feeling of home, a presence that knew him, even though he did not know it himself. He touched the bark of a tree, and it shivered under his fingers. The path ahead narrowed yet glowed, brighter, the golden light guiding him like a heartbeat in the darkness, and he felt a thrill of fear and anticipation mixed together. A pull from the mountains above, drawing him higher and higher, toward the dragon, being older than the sun, older than the rivers, older than the forests. And he understood with a sudden clarity that nothing would ever be the same, that this journey would change him forever, that he was no longer just a janitor, he was the one called, and he must answer. And so, he walked deeper into the forest, listening to the whispers, feeling the warmth, following the light, feeling the dragon waiting and watching, and knowing at last he emerged onto a high ledge, the golden light spilling from the dragon before him, massive, towering and overwhelming the air, trembled with its present scales glinting like molten gold eyes. Molten pools of ancient knowledge focused on him, and he froze, his heart-pounding fear and awe tangled inside him. The dragon lowered its head slowly, until their eyes met. A connection older than words, older than time itself, passed between them. He felt the weight of centuries, of battles, of kingdoms, risen and fallen, and still the dragon waited, watching him, as if measuring his soul. The wind carried the scent of smoke and earth, and something undefinable. The dragon spoke without sound, a thought, a presence, a memory, flooding the janitor with warmth and fear at once. He understood that he had been called, he had been known. All along the ordinary life he had lived had led him here to this impossible moment, and he could not look away. He was seen, and he was recognized, and the dragon waited for his answer. The dragon spoke, and the voice was not a sound. It was a presence, a vibration in the air, a pulse in the earth that filled the janitor from head to toe with awe and fear and understanding. At once it spoke of times long forgotten, of kingdoms that had burned under its wings, of cities that had bowed and rebelled, of stars that had moved across the skies in patterns only it could see. And yet, in all its power and age, it asked only one thing. It asked for the human who knew its true name, a simple request yet heavy with meaning and history. The janitor shivered under the weight of it. He had never imagined a life beyond mopping floors and stacking books. Yet here he was called to carry the secret of an ancient being. He felt the tremor of responsibility coursing through him. The dragon lowered its head until their eyes were level, molten gold, meeting wide brown eyes filled with disbelief. The dragon lingered in the silence, and the janitor could feel centuries of solitude and longing pouring into him. He wanted to turn and run, yet the pull of the name, the certainty that he had been waiting for this moment kept him rooted in place. He whispered the name he had only ever felt in dreams, in stories half forgotten, in the corners of his mind, and the dragon's eyes softened almost imperceptibly, as if recognizing a melody it had longed for centuries. The wind swirled around them, carrying dust and leaves and the faint scent of smoke. The dragon tilted its massive head, and, for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. It was as if mountains, rivers, forests, everything paused to witness the fragile connection between the mortal and the immortal. The dragon lowered one claw to the ground, and the earth trembled. The janitor felt a warmth seep into his bones, and a strength he had never known. The dragon spoke again, in a language he did not hear with ears yet understood with heart. It was not a command, it was a gift, it was trust, it was the sharing of a secret older than time, and he knew in that moment his life would never be ordinary again. He nodded slowly, a shiver running down his spine. The dragon waited silently for him to accept, to bear the burden of knowing, to carry the weight of its name, and in that suspended moment between life and death, the janitor realized that he had been chosen, that the dragon had called him for no other reason than he could be the one, and he would not fail. Suddenly, the shadows stirred in the corners of the cave, shapes twisting and clawing out of the darkness. Creatures long forgotten and feared rose from cracks in the walls, their eyes glowing and teeth sharp. The air grew colder and heavier. The dragon shifted its massive body, a low rumble vibrating through the stone, but it did not strike. It waited, and the janitor felt the pull of fear and adrenaline mixing in his chest. He had nothing but courage and the strange bond that hummed through his bones. He ran forward, luring the shadows away, weaving between stalagmites and broken rock fragments. Remembering the stories he had read, the lessons he had learned, he ducked and dodged and shouted to the shadows, though no sound escaped his lips. The creatures recoiled and surged forward, guided by instinct and malice. He felt the dragon's gaze on him, steady and commanding, as if lending strength and focus with each step. The warmth in his chest pulsed stronger, his mind clearing the path ahead. With determination he realized he could not fail. The dragon had trusted him with its secret, and he would protect it even if he had never fought before, even if he was only a janitor. The shadows hissed and lunged, and he leaped and dodged and spun narrowly, avoiding claws and talons. The golden glow around him intensified, and the dragon shifted closer, its massive form looming over the darkness, a silent guardian. And finally the shadows receded, melting back into the cracks, their growls fading into silence. The janitor stood panting, heart racing, trembling but victorious. The dragon lowered its head slightly in acknowledgement, a soft vibration that filled him with pride and relief. He understood now the weight of the trust he carried and the courage he had found within himself. That ordinary life had ended, and he had stepped into a world of danger and wonder, and he was ready. The dragon closed its eyes, a soft golden light spilling from its massive scales. Like dawn breaking across the mountains, the warmth filled the cave, brushing against the janitor, and the wind carried whispers of ancient times. The dragon breathed slowly, each exhale a song of gratitude, a story of centuries lived and battles fought. The janitor watched, unable to move, completely overwhelmed by the majesty and the fragility of the being before him. It had waited for him, called to him, trusted him, and now it was leaving the space it had inhabited for centuries. A silence deeper than the night settled over the mountains, and he could feel the pulse of the dragon's heart slowing, the warmth fading, the golden glow retreating until it became a shimmer, a mist, a memory. The dragon spoke once more in a voice that was felt rather than heard, carrying both farewell and blessing, a vibration through the air and the earth and the bones of the janitor, reminding him he had been chosen, he had been seen and known, and though it would leave his eyes, he would carry its essence forever. He reached out a hand, but it passed through scales and missed, yet the sensation lingered, a warmth that would never fade. He dropped to his knees, tears running unbidden down his cheeks, and the wind whispered across the ledge, the mountains and valleys alive with the memory of the dragon. The golden light swirled once more around him, and then it vanished, leaving only the echo of power and trust. The janitor felt both emptiness and wonder, a loneliness that was sweet and heavy, a realization that the world had shifted forever, yet in his chest burned a spark of courage and connection that no ordinary life could extinguish. He rose slowly, brushing dust from his clothes, looking out across the valleys, the sun now breaking through clouds, illuminating forests, rivers, and peaks, and he understood that, though the dragon had gone, it had not left him. Truly he carried its name in his heart, a secret and a bond. Ordinary eyes would not see, but extraordinary to him the world seemed larger, brighter, more alive. He stepped down from the ledge into the path, back to the library, each step a promise, each breath a reminder that magic and trust and courage could exist in the most ordinary of lives, and he would never forget. He returned to the quiet halls of the library, the mop in his hand, heavier somehow, yet lighter than it had ever been. The dust and the worn floors were the same, yet everything felt different. The air seemed to hum with a hidden pulse, and the sunlight through the windows cast golden streaks that reminded him of the dragon. The ordinary patrons moved past him, oblivious to the world he had touched, yet he could feel it in every creak of the floorboards, every flutter of the pages, every faint breeze that whispered through the aisles. He walked slowly, each step measured, carrying a secret, older than the oldest book he had ever shelved, a name that no one else would understand, yet a bond that had changed him forever. He paused in the quiet corners of the library, listening to the faint hum of the air, imagining the golden glow lingering just out of sight. He smiled softly, remembering the tremor of the cave, the eyes of the dragon, the pull of its voice through the forest, the courage he had found in the shadows. He swept the floors with care, with reverence, as if each motion honored the memory of the being he had served and saved. He felt the spark of magic in his chest and knew it would never fade. A hidden world had touched his life, and he carried it always. He no longer felt small or ordinary, for he had been chosen, he had been known, he had been trusted, and that trust lived inside him, quietly powerful, like a heartbeat, like a golden thread running through his veins. The library seemed brighter somehow, and he knew that though no one else could see the dragon, or hear its voice, or feel its warmth, he would live forever changed, a janitor, no longer only a janitor, but a keeper of secrets, a bearer of courage, a witness to a world ordinary eyes could never comprehend. And he carried the dragon's name in his heart, and with every step across the wooden floors, every glance at the golden light filtering through the windows, he remembered he had been called, he had been seen, and he would never forget.